In an interview with Suzanne Wise, when asked about the speaker's role in poetry, she responded, "The speaker's role in poetry? To provoke and unsettle, to quicken the pulse of that reader that lives somewhere in the future." I love this answer. And certainly, Wise's poems have been provoking and unsettling me for the better part of 2 decades. But one of the things that Wise has ingeniously complicated is the reader's relationship to the speaker. For example, consider the opening of Wise's award-winning poem, Autobiography. "I am a king's. I am afraid I may be Elia. I am always aware of my mother. I am furious with myself. I am going to sleep." Suicide poem. This poem is a found poem, composed entirely of text taken from the Index of First Lines in a Book of Women Poets from Antiquity to Now, edited by Aliki and Willis Barnstone, specifically using every poem that starts with the pronoun I. On one level, the poem works as a surrealist experiment. The reader cannot help but imagine a composite speaker, a single subjectivity that contains each line. But on another level, it foregrounds diction and syntax in a way that feels like Wise's true subject. What features emerge from the language that reveal more than simply the paraphrasable text? In Wise's book, The Kingdom of the Subjunctive, a frequent source of language is a German textbook, which foregrounds the way in which different language makes different forms of meaning, and how power structures are embedded in the language itself, like using the word mastery to describe fluency, or how one might be taught to say no. Wise is stunningly quotable. Her work is often epigrammatic, precisely because she is so invested in linguistic register and texture. In juxtaposing various kinds of language, her own words become all the more memorable for the way she strips bare something that has been covered up. I love the opening to her poem, Advice. "It is time for you to stop trying to be so smart." Of course it is. And of course, it's not. Suzanne Wise is the author of the poetry collection, The Kingdom of the Subjunctive, and the chapbooks, The Blur Model and Talking Cure. She was twice the recipient of Winter Fellowships from the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown. Her poems are published or forthcoming in American Letters and Commentary, The All, Bomb, Bone Bouquet, Cura, Green Mountain Review, Guernica, Plowshares, Quaint, and Touch the Donkey. She has taught creative writing at Middlebury College in Vermont and Pratt Institute and Poets House in New York City. I'm thrilled to welcome Suzanne Wise.
Thank you so much.
Suzanne, we're having a little bit of a hard time hearing you.
Is this better?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So I wanted to say that was awesome. Thank you, Jason. It was such a wonderfully insightful intro. I just wanted to acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day at the start of my reading. Thinking about reading from the unceded territory of the Lenape people. And I wanted to read part of a poem by Richard Talmott Adams, who is Lenape. The Lenape were forcibly removed from Manhattan and surrounding areas and driven westward. Adams was born in Kansas in 1864, and in 1867, the US government demanded that members of his tribe relocate from Kansas to lands in the Cherokee Nation. So his family moved to Russell Creek, located in the Cherokee Nation in what would become Oklahoma. And he attended school part-time until he was 16. And then he worked herding cattle, running a store, operating a timber business, and writing lots of books about the culture and history of his tribe. He wrote a Delaware Indian legend and the story of their troubles. Delaware was the name that the colonizers of Lenape used for the Lenape people. Starting in 1897, Adams traveled to Washington, D.C. to legally represent members of the Delaware tribe, and he continued to campaign for his people's land rights until his death in 1921 at the age of 57. And I'm just going to read a short excerpt of his long poem to the Delaware Indians. And I really like it a lot. It's got a sardonic quality that is in keeping with my aesthetic. And he has quotations within the poem that is the voice of the government speaking, and I'll just do quote marks for that. If the Indian seeks the government, there his grievance to relate, he must first obtain permission from those who rule the state. If his rights are there denied him, an attorney he would seek. He is sternly then reminded he has no right to speak. For under section so-and-so, which guides your legal move, you see no attorneys can appear for you, except if we approve. And if, in our opinion, your claim does not adhere to the interests of the public, then your cause we cannot hear. End quote. This is a Christian nation. They oft with pride maintain, and even on their money their faith they do proclaim. And none can hold an office here in this Christian land unless he believes in heaven and the future state of man. In every town are churches, God's world is everywhere. Even legislation, good or bad, begins each day with prayer. This is the home of freedom, where justice rules the land, and all, save Indian people, their rights may here demand. So that's the excerpt from Richard Calment Adams. And I thought I would segue from there to a poem that I wrote inspired by our current president. It's the only poem I've managed to write directly in response to him. I feel like the 4 years that he has been our president has been kryptonite to my poetic powers. But this was one that I wrote about him, and not only about him, but those who are among his minions who hold levers of power. And it's called The Leak. One by one, he took them behind closed doors. He reclined under a map pierced with flags of all the countries he'd sold weapons to. He proceeded to unzip his pants, and she jumped up, but the door was locked. She did say no and pushed back, but the CEO on the upper bunk said he never heard it. He told the Attorney General, but he said she should never have agreed to an interview behind closed doors. The judge shrugged and said the proper channels had been flooded, and if she drowned, it proved she never learned the right strokes. So she got the boot, and not just from the president. She had bled. Her blood was a pre-existing condition, according to Congress. Uninsured, unemployed, deployed, declined, she was evicted. She bled out. No one seemed to see the blood falling in torrents over the White House, over the white face of the president as he said, "Wipe that blood out of your forever and ever." What he said leaked to the media, and the nation absorbed it for a moment, then went dry and looked for something else to drink. America. Uh, these are dark times. That poem is part of a manuscript that's called Against Poetry. And it's has a lot of poems that wrestle with problems of speaking and being heard and the limitations of poetry. And this next poem is from that manuscript. It's called Learning to Speak is Like Learning to Shoot. As a girl, I was a shirtless boy with a silver pistol, copying my shirtless brother's careful aim. Learning to speak is like learning to shoot, Alexander Graham Bell supposedly said. When puberty hit, the world sped up and turning on me shot, and my voice broke. I had to hide the shards in my mouth for the rest of my life. You better hurry up, you don't have too many eggs left, said a man I worked with 20 years ago. You're quite attractive, except for your skin. When I reread what I have written, I hear the reader's voice complaining. I don't know who the I is. I don't know who the I is talking to. Sometimes the reader's voice is barely audible. I decide it's female and I ignore it. Sometimes the reader's voice sounds male and I pretend to take notes. Sometimes the reader's voice is not male or female and not asking if I am a ventriloquist. But I try answering anyway, only to discover my voice is an ear. Am I audible? Great. And this next one is kind of a mythologized journey of becoming a poet. What words are for? She slunk toward the city 22 times. The 23rd time she made it past the forest, past the paper pulp factory. In the city, in darkness, at the edge of not, name not on the lease, not insured, unsure, she saw the shoreline splinter into sunset shards of skyscraper. The city burned its skin off, and another skin flared brighter. Orange typewriter on a plastic crate, mattress on the floor, the things she wrote, thorn and stump and iced trees, twisting and gnarled, trees circling a glade, growing upside down inside a mirror. Yes, of trees she wrote, and the trees froze her out. Did she write to be spoon-fed trees because of ailing from an urban ambition? In the city, the trees broke up the sidewalk, and the reader was golden light, drawing branches out of the trunk, growing a world that calls from beyond our deaths. That future listens. It listens to branches talking with branches. Words aren't for books, the trees knew. Words are space debris orbiting the blue. Um, the next set of poems came out of a period of writing in a bunch of different spaces around New York City, from cubicles to tiny office rooms. They were always outside the apartment. I was having a lot of trouble writing. And there wasn't a lot happening until I was sharing this little space with a fiction writer in downtown Brooklyn. And the space was a former monastery, and the monastic quality seemed to rub off on my studio mate. There was just like a table, a chair. The only other thing in the room was a bark lounger, which I was afraid to sit in because I just was afraid I'd get too relaxed and not write. So I just like went and sat in a chair and sat at the desk, and there was not a sheet of paper there, no pictures, nothing. And still nothing was happening. And then I one day decided I would be intrusive and open the closet door, which seemed like a great trespass. And then I saw that there was a giant book on architectural theory. That was it. That was all it was in the closet, was this giant book. And I didn't read the book. I looked at a couple of pages, but I started to think about the space that I was writing in, and about urban space, and about social space, and various concepts of space. And I started to write a series of poems, and they're being published as a chapbook called The Book of Space in 2021. And I'll read a couple from that. And it's basically one long poem, so there aren't titles. I returned the following week. The desk ignored me, naughty, reserved, functional, no nonsense, down to business, preoccupied. The telephone slept in a wooden cabinet mounted to the wall. A small trumpet affixed to the side, black umbilical cord dangling in a loop. When I sat down on the chair, it mutated in color from powdery puce to powdery beige in the sentence I would try to write later. I wanted to settle in, but I teetered, as if something inside the seat cushion shifted its weight from side to side. I decided the space knew I had tried to write a book about speech, or a book about speechlessness, or a book about worse things, a book with blood in it. The truth, even I didn't know what I had tried to write, if it had been one book or many books, if I had written anything at all. I inhaled quickly, the smell of yellowed pages snapping into dust. The desk and the telephone and the chair and the walls and the floorboards all heaved in unison. And so I have a lot of sections that have that refrain, I return the following week. And I'm gonna just read one more, I think, from that. This one has a reference to the German actor Klaus Kinski, who played various psychopaths in a number of Werner Herzog films. And I was once told that I looked like him by two poets right before we were going to go to a reading at KGB. And I was so traumatized that I actually left the reading and went home and Googled, and was chagrined to find that they were not entirely wrong. I returned the following week. The desk, the chair, the telephone, and the coat rack were gone. The space I found myself in appeared to be a foyer with a door at one end. I tried the door, but it was locked. In my pocket, I discovered an ID card with a barcode. The photo printed on the laminated card displayed a face vaguely like mine, but more Klaus Kinski. I showed Klaus Kinski to the door handle, and its laser eye turned from red to green. Click, I was in. A long beige hallway lined with shut maple-colored doors. The suite looked gloved, dry, prim in its wall-to-wall beige carpeting. I felt apron lay. I almost kneeled. I could say I found my way intuited, soft-shoed to the smallest, snailest room. I had only my false ID and my doctorate of I. I knew myself as lost. The truth was, it was the only door cracked open. I padded down the hall, the carpet sucking the sound out of my soles. Painted portraits of Emerson and Whitman overlooked my trespass. Their gaze focused on gilt plaques, remaindered books. I entered the wee room. There, a desk of a desk. I mean, the most desky desk I had ever seen. It took up half the room having nothing else to show for itself except for a chalkboard. The chalkboard, blank and wild with its reaching for the ceiling, took over the entire wall in front of that desk. I sat down at the foot of that chalkboard, chest deep into the space before the desk, and noticed the room was built into a hill. Frosted grasses and frozen clods hugged the window glass. Cool air poured into the room through the vents. I noticed there was no chalk anywhere. The tips of my fingers began to whiten and lose sensation. The earth shifted upward, or the room downward suddenly, like an elevator in free fall. So I'm kind of circling back to the monastic space from that other space, which was actually at a university. Dear space, dear sublet of a wormhole, dear zero perched on the neck of a god, the stars don't care to know they are drifting through your mind of whiteout. Dear peephole into the present moment orbiting the past. Dear I looking up out of a dollar I give to the woman who begs for money, for a Pepsi to wash down her medication. I take out my keys to show I have somewhere to go where no one else can be. I carry my own pills and my water to you and unlock. I take my computer out, ready for the shape of ancient thought. The window makes the view into the self nothing attaches to. Collision-prone area ahead, says the sign when I leave at dusk. A floater in your cornea. I ride high on the rails over prisons, housing projects, and waterfront real estate, the demise of architecture, the big crud. Light travels across thousands of years so we can see stars that died before we were born. The driver's ed car glides by promising, we will help you pass. As for the moon, it hovers in your loins. It won't wax or wane. It just sits there. You don't need a heart. I am the hole in your chest, and I am sending my messages vibrating through the ionosphere. Somewhere a scientist measures my call. I just have a couple more. I'm talking to you, space. I want to blank out and then you kick up a new breeze. The new monument to the old dead, the $4 billion train station. The smack of the angry hand against the window of the subway car. Marks anteloping into oblivion. This is the cement mind of space overhearing graffiti. Save Our Kids flourished on the roof of the bashed-in factory building. Our kids total up at the cash registers. The sandwich seller with his cart at the street corner asks me if I have a job in there, where I go with my key and my bag. I lie and say yes, embarrassed that my bag contains only moments of being. I have never felt more previous. You and your vanishing point dictating our finitude. Bridge cut to ribbons by my narrow frame of reference. I hear you in the toilet pipes. Are you sobbing or giggling over the fact of all our bodies? High above all our bodies, you blew in around the Powerball billboard, more dazzling than any star, than any staring eye of yours. And this is my last one. Space, you look tentative, you thin, floating, but not yet leaving. Chains clanking, crushed Coke can skitters toward my ankle. Your emissary wants to tell me something. I already know the Supreme and family courts are closed for the century. White man in a black suit, red tie, wheels his suitcase quickly up the block. The birds yell, cameras pan. The park is locked tight, but the trees in the park are calm and don't flinch. The trees dig their roots into cement, shift their leaves around as if fingering rare coins. You are those coins, and there is a story about you the trees try to remember, the story of how you were spent. The trees keep tossing their leaves out, touching where you once were. We all look up at the tops of skyscrapers. You aren't anywhere. Thank you. Thank you for the applause.
Well done. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
And we have some favorite lines in the chat here. What were you going to say, Jason?
Oh, I was going to ask if people wanted a break or if we wanted to go right into Hannah. Sometimes people seem to kind of want to like run out and refresh drinks. Sometimes people want to like go right ahead. Sometimes people want to like bask and read like
sometimes, yeah,
the lines.
Sometimes it's both. Yeah, let's give it like 1 minute. Get people can get a drink, get another pineapple Truly, and then yeah, we'll come back with Hannah again.
Oh, whoops.
That's a great moment. So, Jason, you hear my applause noise?
I love the applause noise.
Right.
I'm really impressed. Like I was like, why haven't we been doing this all along?
Yeah.
Do you have sarcastic clap? Do you have like 1980s like?
No, but I could probably get.
That would be. I mean, we should never do that to anyone. But
no.
but
we can do it to each other.
We can do it to each other.
Yeah.
After the introductions, we could just like.
Yeah. They're like, thank you, Jason. That was average. Thank you, Sabrina. Yeah, just experimenting with some new things here at the KGB bar.
No, I
Hopefully
love I love the applause.
Maybe for the open mic night.
But yeah, a lot of different things. Yeah.
We should, when people are done, they could get one of 3 little sounds, like a golf clap or like a, I don't know, or like a yeah, or I don't know.
The open mic is actually, let me, I should tell you everything that's coming up. Yeah, the open mic in particular is November 30th. So let me put that.
Actually, let me grab
and then next week we have Jeffrey Harrison and Owen Lewis. October 26th, Matthew Thorburn and Sarah Kane Gutowski. On November 2nd, we have Charlie Clark and Patrick Donnelly. On November 16th, we have Elaine Equi and Jerome Sala. And November 23rd, we have Fiona J. Lorraine and Nate Klug. And Jada is saying to follow us on Instagram, where you can get updates on everything. And if you're not getting the emails, send your email in the chat to me or to Matthew Yeager, and we will get you onto the email list so that you'll get those on Sunday nights. And the link that you have for tonight will continue to work for the rest of the season.
This being, I don't think we said earlier, but it's year 23, season 46, I believe, episode 7. And it's pretty much all cataloged, I think, at least a lot of it, in all kinds of different places. Google it, and you'll find like old listings. Yeah. But as everybody knows, it's been a really legendary series. Hopefully, if anybody can even throw a couple of bucks towards them in the Fundly campaign as well, we do intend to go back. And the problem with having 11 people allowed is once you get me and Jason out of the way, and then if the reader brings anyone with them, or both readers, then there's room for about 4 audience members. But we're going to keep revisiting this idea. But that's that. And then I'll put the link again for Fundly. And okay. So I don't know, are we good to go? Hannah, what is the dog's name? I think you're still muted.
The dog's name is Marnie.
Marnie.
Someone told me that was the Hocus Pocus reference, but I didn't remember the names of those 3 ladies, so I didn't know if it was true.
Their names are Sarah, Winifred. I forgot the last person's name.
Maybe it was Marnie.
Marnie's from Halloween Town.
Oh.
Yeah, because I don't remember a Marnie from Hocus Pocus at all. And I'm like a huge Hocus Pocus fan, so.
Well, I trust you then.
I don't know. Does anybody else have trouble these days with fun Halloween movies? I feel like at some point, if it doesn't scare the shit out of me, I don't really want to, you know what I mean? Like,
watch Hocus Pocus.
Is it scary?
Well, actually,
it's a fun Halloween movie.
No, that's what I'm saying. I have a hard time with those. I don't know. It's just sort of too fun.
It involves
all right,
music.
listen, enough of my issues. Why don't we move on with this?
Well, I would have gone with the Tippi Hedren character in the Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Birds.
Hmm.
No, there's another.
Marnie. Okay.
Yeah, it's her movie, Marnie. And Marnie.
Oh, I didn't know. Maybe it's that.
Tippi Hedren plays. Yeah.
There's also a Marnie in Girls, right?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, but it better fucking not be that.
And then there's Marnie Nixon. All the Marnies. Yeah.
That's true.
Quick question. Can we get Suzanne Wise back on? I just want to get a screenshot of her to put on the Instagram real quickly.
Sure.
Sure.
Suzanne, just say something. Just turn off your muting so that you can like be the screenshot again.
Hello.
Speaker view. There you go.
Got it. Perfect. Thank you.
Thank
You were
you.
excellent, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Let's go for the second round. Sound good, everybody?
All right.
All right. Fantastic. Okay. Where's my... Hannah Gamble, who, if you haven't met, you just have moments ago. Hannah writes perfect poems. They're full of wit, clear sight, intellect, and uncompromising social conscience. When you're reading her poems, you also get a sense that the rush stops. You get time and space. It's like a kind of Saturday morning feeling. She embraces a type of stoicism that honors and is fully aware of the urgency of the moment, but has the magical potential to slow that moment down and understand it. There's an abiding humanism in her work, a clear way of rendering the dreamlike nature of conversation and thought, and all throughout the vague sense she's evolved more than the average person and can reveal things to us. I have not read her second book. It comes out next year, I believe in the fall, and I can say I have been waiting for it for some time. Her first, which is right here, Your Invitations to a Modest Breakfast, back when we were doing Cold Front, I remember was like, I think number 10 on our list of like the 40 best poetry books of 2012. Where the fuck does the time go? Right, man. I kind of like that Spacey, though, to be honest, and I can't wait for the next installment in her discography, as it were. And it's an event really for anyone who's been serious about new poetry for the last 10 years. Hannah is a poet, essayist, screenwriter, and director. Her first book, Your Invitation to a Modest Breakfast, won the National Poetry Series in 2011, selected by Bernadette Mayer, I think, and published on Fence Books. In 2014, she received the Ruth Lily Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Fellowship from the Poetry Foundation. She's the writer, director, and executive producer of the Chicago-based web series Choose Me, an Abortion Story, which was selected for several national and international film festivals, winning the Award of Excellence for a TV show from the Montreal Independent Film Festival in 2020. Her second book, The Traditional Feel of the Ballroom, will be published next year by Tri-House Press. Here's Hannah Gamble.
Hi. That was so nice, John. Thank you. It's funny that you referred to my work as, or you said there was an element of stoicism, and actually like the first poem I ever wrote was with refrigerator magnets that somebody gave my family like for Christmas one year. And I can actually, well, okay, I can't remember the whole poem. I thought I had it memorized because it was really short. I was going to recite it for you. But I do remember, and this was when I was, I don't know, like 15 or 16. I remember that I refer to myself as a blushing stoic who sings in that refrigerator magnet poem. So anyway, I'll read a poem now. This is from that book that John was talking about. It's called Biotic, Abiotic. This is the movement a poem makes. A trash bag, breaking and breaking until a brilliant red pear falls out, whole and untroubled. How did that happen? You moved around me like a plastic daisy on a plastic stem, spinning in yard wind. We never really got it together. I think you prefer astronomy because how far away everything is exactly the order of things. I prefer poems, but I understand that their human smell is often troubling. The lack of this is another good thing about a star's dying, I guess. I guess that ties in well with Suzanne's space poems. I didn't even plan it. I didn't even plan it. This is amazing. I'm gonna actually read the first poem from this book because I was just thinking about how it's sort of a like booty call in poem form, but I did not really plan it because I endured 3 years of celibacy in my graduate school times. So I was not booty calling anybody at all. But I did write this poem. Your invitation to a modest breakfast. It's too cold to smoke outside, but if you come over, I'll keep my hands to myself, or won't I? I would like to tell you about the wall eaten up by the climbing plant. It was so beautiful. Various things have been happening to me, all of them sexual. The man on the bus took off his pants so I could see him better. Another man said, "Ignore him, darling, just sit in my lap." But I'm not one of those who's hungriest in the morning, unlike the man at the bakery who eats egg after egg after egg. Listen, come over. The cold has already eaten the summer. I need another pair of ears. From the kitchen, I can't tell if I'm hearing wind chimes or some gray woman with failing arms dropping a panful of onions and potatoes. This morning, I need 4 hands, 2 to wash the greens, 1 to lift a tea kettle, 1 to pour the milk. This little morning, 1 little mouth will not do. We could play a game where we crouch on the tiles, 2 yellow dogs drinking coffee from bowls. We could play a game where we let the breakfast burn. Outside, there's a world where every love scene begins with a man in a doorway. He walks over to the woman and says, "Open your mouth." Now, 2 things have occurred to me in the course of sharing that poem with you. One is that it would be very cool if Catherine O'Hara, the woman who plays Moira from Schitt's Creek, if she could just read all of my poems from now on. I don't know if you've seen that show, but she has a lot of wigs. And then another thing that occurred to me is that, I forgot. I'm surprisingly drunk on 1 pineapple Truly. Like, I actually haven't had very much to drink this quarantine. And I don't know, so it means I can get drunk on like one Truly now. Oh, I know what the other thing that occurred to me is like, I literally wrote this book when I was like 26 and I'm like 38 now. And it's like, I still like these poems, but it's funny to read them and be like, what was going on with little Hannah? Like, what was she dealing with? You know? All right. I do actually want to read to you from this book that's going to come out with Trio House, which, I mean, I think I also had finished by like age 32 or something. So these poems still feel like centuries ago, but I mean, I still like them. Well, I don't remember this one, so let's read it. It's called Different Dirt. A little bit of blood on the hand, a little bit of pee in the snow, a little bit of soup on your sweater. You were trying to drink the soup from a mug in the car. A little bit of relief when your spouse's return home is delayed by a snowstorm. A little bit of pride. You were just 18 when a coworker told you you were funny like a guy is funny. A little bit of exhaustion when someone looking at you naked tells you that you're beautiful. A little bit of anger, always. Let's retire to tiny cottages in the wilderness and be done with it. Each other. Currently, interpersonal disputes are taxes on the body, out of which the spirit will climb, trying to escape. Half in, half out, the spirit flaps above the body's head like a windsock. Some disputes between lovers cannot be resolved, so flee. Some disputes between lovers over whose floor lamp is uglier cannot be resolved because the two separate realities are both strong-headed, well-educated lovers, so firmly contrary. They're different trees growing out of different dirt in different countries. It is weird to not be able to hear you guys, because usually when I'm giving readings, I look out into the crowd, I think like, who needs to hear a poem about bestiality right now? It's Jason. But then the fun thing about reading the bestiality poem is that you might hear someone go, oh, or I don't know, maybe, I mean, one time I was giving a reading in Nashville. I am looking for the bestiality poem while I'm talking, by the way. Oh, I found it. I was giving a reading at this bookstore in Nashville, and my stepmom had invited her friend Cheryl to come. And Cheryl's fine with me, but she did sit in the first row, and I did read this poem. And then I did look out into the crowd, and I saw that Cheryl's face was like, and I said, oh, Cheryl, I see you, Cheryl. You didn't like that poem? And she was like, oh, and she like saw that I saw her, and she tried to like rein it back in and like pretend like she was fine with everything, but she really couldn't pull it off. So it was just like a different kind of grimace. That will be the title of my third book of poetry, A Different Kind of Grimace, poems by Hannah Gamble, read by Catherine O'Hara as Moira Shit. The Queen. The Queen came to visit me about my impending loss of virginity. The messier the better, she said. I know, I said, but I was thinking that an animal would be best for the first time for practice. Oh no, said the Queen. We reserve animals for people who have done it 100 times with humans. Have you done it with an animal? I said. Oh yes, said the Queen. Well, I was thinking that I should do it with an animal, I said, just the first time for practice. The Queen withdrew, and escorts arrived shortly. They took me to the field where I was meant to mate with a tree. They said I had a poet's contrary disposition. Bwah, bwah, you know? Well, I feel like maybe I should read like one more poem, then it will be about an hour, right? That seems good. Okay, cool. So this is another poem from my second book, and it's called A Tiny Spot. A tiny spot. A tiny spot of blood on my shirt is not the subject of this poem. I felt sick, knowing I'd said what I didn't mean and then dreamed about having said exactly what I meant, and oh look, everything worked out fine. You are wrong if you think that a girl making up her own language after something she never wants to talk about happens to her is the subject of this poem. I receive emails all the time, and physical mail too, so don't tell me that my life isn't full of feeling cared about and feeling safe, or alternatively, knowing that if in this moment a gray horse came charging down Chicago's streets, that I could stop that horse in her tracks and ask for a ride and be given it. And not even have to wear a coat, because joy conducts heat like the perfect thing someone says when you're upset. Though in other situations it would sound like an insult, but in that moment it's kind, because truth is a service and a vote of confidence that you can take it. You don't even have to clean yourself up very much for someone who knows you. Horse, when I saw you charging past the ice cream vendor, streaming sweat, eyes mostly white from panic and strength, anger and exhaustion, my mind recognized you and called out to you with my name. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Hannah. Thank you so much, Suzanne. If anybody in the audience has any kind of questions or thoughts real quick before we go, for our writers, it seems like a pretty well-behaved crowd. So anybody with anything? All right, well, I'll get the ball rolling.
I have a question
sorry.
for Hannah. Sorry.
Okay, sorry, go ahead, Suzanne.
What's the title of your new book, the forthcoming book?
It's called The Traditional Feel of the Ballroom.
Nice. Great title.
Thank you.
And that's fall 2021, right? God, what's the world going to be like then? Who's going to be president? Is there going to be a plague? We don't know what the hell's going on.
Will I be alive, John?
Yeah.
You don't even know.
We're in a plague now.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
Catch up.
What's the wait, what's been going on? Hang on a second.
I bought a book on astral projection and how to learn how to do it in 90 days is what's been going on.
Wait,
How
when did
many
you buy
days
it?
in are you?
Yeah.
I haven't started yet because I'm in training to be like a sexuality and relationship and intimacy coach. And I also just got my level 2 Reiki certification. And then I'm also planning this second book, and I'm also still promoting my TV show. So I have not started it, but I know that the basis of it will be like getting really good at meditating real fast, real deep.
Well, so you sort of just answered the question that I was going to ask you, but what is the, so when you take sort of, I know that I work very slow. So to go sort of, let's say a decade between books, is this something, do you write a lot in between, or are you sort of just like, what's the?
Well, the thing is, I wrote the second book pretty much right after the first book came out, but it just honestly took 5 years to get it picked up. Like, it was finalist a bunch of times. And so, I mean, I don't even really write a lot of poetry anymore. I'm writing more essays and screenplays. I mean, I'm not saying I'd never do it again. I just, I think it was kind of a psychological, like, thing where I almost didn't even want to write more poems when it was like taking so long to have my second book come out. But I also think there are some things that I've been dealing with just like IRL that I am not good at writing poems about, and I have to go to another kind of writing to do it right.
You write your poems have a lot of dialogue and stuff. Does that help you with writing, screenwriting, and that sort of thing, or I guess not help you, but is that all kind of on the same wavelength?
Yeah, totally. I'm just like always listening, and I have a pretty good memory, and things just really, I'm like debilitatingly sensitive. So I don't know, I just feel everything and see everything and remember everything and know more than I'd like to. So it's just it all gets stored up, and then it's actually pretty easy, you know, when I was writing screenplays, like I just have like word for word reels in my brain of like how a certain conversation happened, if it was interesting enough to kind of, you know, affect me and stick with me.
Interesting. And I have a question for Suzanne too. I'll just keep asking all the questions, I guess. I
Yeah.
don't know, but
John.
I'm interested in this idea about the kind of, when you said that the election of Trump kind of created a state where it was almost hard to write or hard to write about that. And it's interesting because sometimes it's like that political maxim about how like a tragedy is something almost like to exploit, or like, oh, look, it's an opportunity to have something. But actually I felt kind of the same way, that this one was almost kind of debilitating in that way. Or that I also noticed in the first few months of the whole COVID thing, you know, you're stranded at home. It's a great opportunity to write. And I know that I personally, for the first 3 months, didn't do it at all. And I just wondered why you think that was the response for you after Trump.
I think that I was trying to write poems in the mode of my first book, which had a lot of political satire. And there's something, I feel like Trump just sort of like outstripped the ability to satirize. You know, he's so absurd. He's so darkly absurd that there's like nothing to make fun of. You just like slap headlines and newspaper articles down, and there it is. So yeah. So, you know, my poems sort of went in a different direction, and I've been writing fiction, and I've been writing, my fiction has been in the form of fables, which have sort of enabled me to address issues of power and politics in a kind of roundabout way. Yeah. I don't know how other poets write politically responsive poems. I thought I knew how to do it, but Trump ruined me.
That he kind of almost defies irony. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can't even.
Well, humor. For most of the aughts, like humor, you know, the right wing tried really, really hard to have some kind of response to the Daily Show, to have some kind of, you know, like sort of version of funniness. And it was sort of like the left was funny, but then the right kind of settled on these really shitty jokes where they slowly became true. So like the Daily Show, where you're like, oh, that's a joke, but now you're actually Holocaust deniers, but you also wish the Holocaust had finished. and so there's this way in which like the joke, like the Pepe the Frog, or like, you know, the Hawaiian shirts for Electric Boogaloo. I mean, even calling it the Electric Boogaloo, it's like, you know, it's like this weird dark mirror version of humor that turns that makes your own humor feel wrong, or makes your own humor feel
exactly
like you're the vampire version, like you're the funhouse mirror.
Well,
they have like the oh, I'm just kidding thing, right?
Yeah.
What were you going to say, Hannah?
Well, I was going to say I really like satire too, like a lot. And my response to a lot of like injustices in the world, like at least as far, I mean, sometimes my writing is literally just my Twitter feed, you know, like I'm not intending to turn it into a poem, but I have to say some stuff about what's happening, you know? And there was like this point where, I mean, always my driving force had been to like ridicule or like expose logical fallacies or just generally bring awareness to something that I thought maybe like the people I went to church with in middle school didn't know about, you know. And then there was this point, it was, you know, probably halfway through COVID or something, where I just started to feel like I was actually just adding to the poison, not because my heart was poisoned, but just because like in trying to educate people about things or satirize things or ridicule things, I was still like sharing these awful stories. And it just like got to this point where it was like, I think I just want to share something really wholesome that can honestly just help people alleviate their suffering even for a millisecond. And so honestly, like,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about like that the next piece of art I put out into the world should just be like pure pornography, like just delicious, sexy, colorful, unrealistic fun, you know, like, because maybe that's what we need, is just like any way that serotonin can get to us. God. That's what's on my mind.
Get that short bus energy.
Did you say what now?
Short Bus, the movie, the John Cameron Mitchell movie, Short Bus.
Oh, you know, I never saw it.
I didn't get
It's
the reference either. I
pornographic.
was like-
Oh, sorry. Then everyone thinks I'm saying a terrible thing. Sorry. No, I'm referring to the John Cameron Mitchell. Right after Hedwig wanted to do something with live sex, and he really wanted to kind of like cross the boundary into pornography. And the movie Short Bus does that. It's sort of like Bruce LaBruce does that, like with more and less success. But like Short Bus is like, check it out.
And yet, the movie in which Chloe Sevigny gives a real live blowjob is Brown Bunny.
Yeah, and that's a really like I don't. Well, I shouldn't. I mean, that was my face. I don't know. What was your response when you were watching it?
I didn't see it. I just know about it.
It was sort of like, because, you know, there was no reason to give the blowjob except to be giving the blowjob in a movie. So it wasn't like a plot critical blowjob where you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. And this is part of the, you know, suspension of disbelief. And it wasn't like a joyful blowjob in which like everyone involved was getting lots of pleasure. It was sort of like this, well, I mean, it's Chloe Sevigny, right? I mean, there's this sort of like,
It's never been joyful.
we're gonna do this.
Where are the female directors making the movies about these things?
Oh,
about
well,
plot
I
critical,
actually
yeah.
saw a really great movie by a female director about like teen abortion that was super dope. It's called Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and it actually involves.
I love that movie.
Oh yeah, so good.
Yeah.
I have a friend here in Chicago who has a podcast called Screen Vomit, and they, because I have made a TV show about my own abortion, my friend invited me on their podcast to talk about this movie, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and later actually had the lead actor, a non-binary person named Sydney Flanagan, had the lead actor on the same podcast, because my friend was just a fucking badass and emailed, or like, I don't know, messaged them on Instagram and was like, love your movie, be in my podcast. And it totally happened. So anyway, female director though of that movie, Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always, and it's an awesome film.
But is it about sexuality, and does it have a pornographic element? That's sort of what I was suggesting.
Specifically that. I mean, there's sexuality just in kind of like teen female sexuality and sexual harassment. But no, I mean, maybe
like sexual pleasure movies
right. I know
made
that
by
would
women.
be great. I have to say, I've watched that porn that's like, ooh, this is the sensual porn made by women for women, and it's just kind of like people having sex on sort of a massage table, like in a gazebo, like with spa music playing. It is
Flutes.
not hot. It's like they just tell the actors like smize at each other and then just do everything like regular porn, but slower and with like a yellow filter on the lights.
Is this what they think female directed porn is supposed to be? Is this what they think that we think of?
I don't know. And like, I can't say that I necessarily know what kind of porn I make or would make, but I mean,
And with the stereotype of it all.
Yeah, no gazebos, no tiki torches. God, like, not that. Maybe more like, I don't know, hot summer camp vibes in the canoe shack. I don't know, just spitballing here. That's what we're doing here, right? That's what
It's
this
Yeah. No, you got.
subjective.
recording function is for, is to capture these gems with mine.
So summer camp vibes. That's book 4. Oh no, book 4 is no gazebos. Yeah.
Among like camp counselors.
Yeah.
That was not clear. Consenting adults
Yeah.
getting freaky in the kayak shack.
With other camp counselors,
With other camp counselors. The kids are
preferably.
elsewhere, like doing a relay race with
Color war.
egg on a spoon, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how summer camp horror movies come across. It's like the counselors are messing out with other counselors and not paying attention to the kids.
That's true, but there's a nanny at this camp. There's like a camp nanny for when the counselors need to get it on. I mean, I'm in charge of this
summer
reality.
camp.
This is the best Q&A that I've ever attended in Poetry Land.
Yeah, this
Pretty
is going
good
pretty
Q&A.
well.
It's really fun.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, any other questions now that you
Look,
know
all the
that
questions, Anna, the questions are all going to be about the plot
Can
now.
you-
They'll be like,
can
so the
you,
nanny.
Hannah, can you put up both of Hannah and Suzanne, if you guys could put in the chat anything that you guys that we can, any way that we can follow you or reach out to you?
Sure, I'll
Any
put
projects
it
you
in
guys are
my
working on?
Instagram. I was just posting nudes trying to make more people gay for National Coming Out Day.
I respect it. I
Yeah.
just followed you on Instagram through the KGB website, the KGB Monday night. So
Okay, cool.
that was me that followed you, and you followed me.
No,
Probably that's bad.
I'm also gonna put the name of the internet TV network that's showing my abortion TV show, because they have a lot of insanely cool content from a lot of queer people and people of color, and it's just a very, very excellent, wonderful stories and wonderful shows that there's no way in hell you would ever see anywhere else, because technically this TV network is a nonprofit and started by a film professor at Northwestern here in Chicago, but it's cool. So I'm gonna drop that too, because there's some interesting stuff.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first poetry reading I've been to. So I don't know if this is way too broad a question, but how on earth do you start doing this? Because I write a lot and I just kind of realized I want to maybe make a career and I have no idea how to do that. And I'm just curious how you even start.
Do you have any
All about the
thoughts,
money.
Suzanne?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Are you already writing poems or lines
Yeah.
of poems, or
Yes.
so you've already started?
Ah, it's that simple.
Pretty much. Yeah.
Wow.
And then there's reading poetry, and taking a writing workshop can be helpful if it's taught by the right person, to get feedback for your work. I think having readers is really helpful, because sometimes you have an idea of where you're going or what you want out of a poem, and then the reader has a different experience. So it's kind of trying to align those different elements.
Right.
Yeah.
I want to say also, when I realized that I wanted to be a poet, but didn't have a degree in English or whatever, I just joined a community like women's writing group. I was living in Bloomington, Indiana at the time, and it was just like sort of a, like middle-aged sort of hippie-ish, lady that just brought some other ladies together to sit on the floor and drink tea and read what they had written that week. And it was so valuable for me in that it just gave me a reason to write every week. And it also just gave me time to so fall in love with writing poetry that I just within like a month was like, okay, I want to go to grad school for poetry. And so I would say that sometimes even you don't even have to be too picky about who's going to be giving you feedback. Like it literally could just, the ladies in my group, there were people who were like, had joined that class because they had just had a 50th birthday and were kind of freaking out about being 50, or there were ladies who had been cancer survivors, or there was a woman who had recently, experienced a sexual trauma and just wanted a place to process that. But there wasn't even a specific focus on poetry. And I don't know that anyone there, was a teacher or like a serious writer, quote unquote, but it didn't matter at all. It, for me, ended up like not even so much being about specific feedback in regards to my work, but just a truly safe and supportive environment that let me just kind of go on with the thing that I was getting a little bit obsessed with. And so, having some kind of community and some reason to write every week, I think is really the best place to start.
You should come
Thank
to
you
our
guys
open
so
mic.
much.
You should totally come to, you should do the, what's the date on that, Jason?
November 30th.
November 30th. Yeah, come in. It's going to be
Yeah.
more than likely, or definitely in a Zoom room like this too. So I
And
think
keep
that
coming
like,
here on
yeah,
Monday
and
nights.
yeah, exactly. I
Yeah,
think
thank you.
like go into readings, and then like, I think just like read it. If there are people giving you opportunities, there's open mics and things like that. Sometimes it is interesting to hear your voice out loud, so, and to just
Thank
kind
you
of like,
guys. Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify what I was saying about being selective about who you take a workshop with, I just had some experiences early on when I was trying to figure out how poetry worked, in which there were certain teachers that had a particular idea. This is what a poem is. And I was interested in other things. But because I was also reading a lot, I was able to be like, okay, that's their opinion. This is what I want to do. But, you have to sort of be ready to make that separation.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think, when I like hear about poetry teachers that want to be all like gatekeepery and tell their students like, guess what? You don't have what it takes. Just drop out of, like get another major, babe. Like, fuck that. Like, I think, or, even in grad school, I would be aware of professors that are like, I just don't respect the prose poem, so I won't be giving you any feedback on your, addition to this week's workshop. Like, fuck that. Good God. So I would say if you have to choose between like really talented and just generally fucking supportive, like just go with fucking supportive. Someone who, like Suzanne is saying, will like let you be interested in whatever you want to be interested in, and won't be trying to tell you prescriptively how to be a good poet, but will actually pay attention to like what tendencies you have, what seems to interest you, what kind of poets you like, and then will just sort of give you recommendations or encouragement or guidance based on that rather than their own thing. Like, I literally had a poetry workshop. Can I like drop a name right now, or is that a bad idea?
You're on. I'll stop the recording so that.
Okay, you can stop the recording. I'll